Our moderator today is Metropolitan Peace Initiatives Executive Director Vaughn Bryant. And Vaughn's going to open with a few remarks and I think a video, right?
Yep.
All right, welcome to City Club.
Appreciate it.
Look forward to the discussion.
Yep. Thank you, Dan. And thank you to the City Club for having us here today. I became a member, I think, in like 2011, so it's kind of full circle.
Active, I hope.
It is still active. It is still active. So it's good to be here to be able to speak in front of you guys today. Thank you for convening this important conversation, and thank you to all of you, our panelists, for everything you do to keep our city safe. Good afternoon and welcome to the Metropolitan Peace Initiatives special panel discussion on community violence intervention, also known as CVI. I'm Vaughn Bryant, Executive Director of Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, also known as MPI, and I will be serving as your moderator this afternoon. I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about MPI and our coalition of community-based organizations known as Communities Partner for Peace, or CP4P, a lot of acronyms. So MPI is a division of Metropolitan Family Services which coordinates, supports, and sustains a cross-agency infrastructure made up of local community-based organizations, citywide partners who deliver a comprehensive set of services to help heal our communities at highest risk of gun violence. And our core services include behavioral health, workforce readiness, legal aid, and then we also do organizational development, which is basically capacity building for the local organizations that we support. And then we also administer the Metropolitan Peace Academy, which is our highly acclaimed multidisciplinary training platform designed to professionalize and strengthen the field of street outreach and community violence prevention. MPI was created to support Communities Partner for Peace, a coalition of 13 community-based organizations focused on reducing gun violence in 27 neighborhoods across Chicago. So behind me, you can see a map of where we're located in the city. We started this in 2017 with 8 partners working in 9 communities, and we've grown pretty rapidly over the last 6 years. So what we do is a combination. Our core services are street outreach, case management, victim services, and our community events are called Light in the Night, where we have events in our local communities 3 nights a week in the summer and once a month, fall, winter, spring. According to our data analysts, as of August of this year, 12 of our top 20 CP4P communities were showing a 60% decrease in gun violence when compared to the same periods last year. It's also important to note that during Labor Day weekend this past year, we had 7 shootings that total weekend versus 18 the year before. So here's a quick video to kind of give you a sense of how we got started.
The Metropolitan Peace Initiatives started as a result of, the backlash against war after the killing of Laquan McDonald. I mean, it's just as simple as that. The city saw a spike of gun violence at that time, and the civic leaders here in town, I think, were alarmed by it. And a few of the leaders called and said, hey, can we meet? And I said, well, why don't we just come on a Saturday to MFS and let's whiteboard stuff.
Rick saw that Metropolitan had a role to play in addressing gun violence.
It would be the first time in the history of the city where 2 men of color are leading a program of this kind that look just like the kids that are being shot. Both care deeply about this issue and about our children and our young men and people.
We had to start to build a team. That team ultimately evolved into what we call Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, which over time became its own division within Metropolitan Family Services that convene Communities Partner for Peace, that administers the Metropolitan Peace Academy, but then also provides some direct services for all of the CP4P partners, whether it's behavioral health, whether it's workforce development, whether it's our Justice Corps, which is run by our Legal Aid Society.
We just responded, as we always do, to the community's need. The community saying, hey, we need you engaged through our hyper-local partners. That will continue to be our role.
All right, so allow me to introduce our panelists today. In the middle is Jesus Salazar, a lifelong resident of Little Village. Jesus started his work at Cure Violence in 2011. He's a 2018 graduate of Metropolitan Peace Academy. Jesus works in our bilingual communities and was recently promoted to senior field manager for the Metropolitan Peace Academy this year, where he facilitates and teaches curricula aimed at helping other professionals become outreach workers. Closest to me is Angela Hurlock, CEO of Claretian Associates, a proud CP4P partner. Claretian Associates is a community development corporation that is dedicated over 30 years of working on local schools, churches, and other organizations in building up services and resources in low-income neighborhoods, on homelessness in Chicago, South Shore, South Chicago, and South Deering neighborhoods. Community violence intervention drives a lot of their work. And on the far end is Soledad McGrath, Executive Director and Research Professor at Northwestern University's Center for Neighborhood Engaged Research and Science, also known as Corners, a university-based research center conducting cutting-edge research into the ways that neighborhood science can be used to understand and address gun violence and other pressing social issues. Thank you each for joining us today. All right. So in you guys' own words, tell us what CVI is. Anybody can start. How about you start, Jesus?
Yeah, sure. For me, CVI is individuals who are invested in making a safer Chicago, right? Individuals who have been through the fire, right? Those individuals such as myself and, you know, my colleagues, right, who share the same type of work. CVI for me is making sure that our communities are better, right? Making sure that our communities are, you know, are safer, right? For everyone. So for me, that's what CVI work is.
Take us through a day in the life of an outreach worker.
Day in the life of an outreach worker. Wow, it's actually 24/7, right? People reaching out to you on a daily basis, even on your days off, you know, to really focus on building others up, right? I like to personalize my story, right? For me being an influence in my community, a positive one, a lot of people reach out to me for specifics, right? Individuals who might be looking for a job, individuals who might need diapers for their baby, individuals who might need food in their fridge, right? So, you know, being that pillar in my community, right, is that, right? That, you know, that individual who can provide all those things for individuals and also be that bridge that connects people to different resources. Actually, I was sharing some of the things that are happening here on my story on Snapchat, and a lot of the young guys from my neighborhood are like encouraging me, right? Because I encourage them. So being an outreach worker is that, encouraging individuals to be better. When I was growing up, I aspired to be, you know, one of those individuals who did bad in my neighborhood, right? So I have to change that, right? I had to change that and focusing on, you know, bettering myself so that others can aspire to be like me, right? So that's what being an outreach worker is.
So Soledad, doing your research, I think you've gotten to know a lot of outreach workers. Give us your perspective on what you've learned about outreach workers.
Yeah, what Jesus shared is so powerful, because that's exactly what we see, and that's what's also so powerful about the coalition itself. The work of an outreach worker is so difficult. It's hard to put into words, and it's always hard for me. I tend to get emotional, but we recognize that our traditional first responders are putting themselves in dangerous situations. We recognize the trauma that they experience, and we don't often think more broadly as a community about our outreach workers and violence interventionists as first responders as well. And often, because they are so close to the community, they are in their community, in their neighborhoods, they often are first at the scene of incidents of gun violence. So they are having direct contact with not only victims, but the victims' families. And the levels of exposure to violence are truly astronomical. So we've had the privilege of working with many of the partners here that are part of the coalition on a really groundbreaking study called the Violence Intervention Worker Study, in which we had the opportunity to survey all of the outreach workers about the experience of what it means to be an outreach worker. What does it mean to be, what does exposure to violence look like? What does it mean financially, economically? And the one point that we tend to focus on is exposure to violence, because it is so high. 70% of outreach workers are witnessing some kind of gunshot victimization just as part of their job. 20% are being shot as part of their job. So that requires us to be really thinking about the kinds of supports that these professionals need in order to be able to do their jobs.
Yeah. And Angela, I talked about, outreach, case management, victim services. Talk about at the organizational level how all of those things fit together.
Right, so at the organizational level, a lot of the organizations around the table, we don't all just work on violence, right? Claretian Associates itself is a housing developer. And I was so tremendously proud of my organization and our board. When we had about 15 years ago, we had a really hard conversation. I had to talk to them about nobody wants to live in an apartment if their kids can't walk down the street. If their kids if they can't go to the store safely, if they can't experience their neighborhood, if all they're doing is sleeping in their neighborhood, they're not living in their neighborhood, then we have to become involved in how we approach getting rid of this violence. And so that was our foray into saying, how can we, as a housing developer, be involved in violence reduction? And so being a part of this coalition, as an organization that didn't start out in violence intervention, it helped us to build our capacity in order to understand the issues and to understand that just like you can catch a cold, if you're prevalently around someone with a virus, you might attract that virus. If you're constantly in an environment where there's violence going on, you might learn violent activity. But just like you can learn that violent activity, you can unlearn that violent activity, because the individuals that are taking part in it, who are not only portraying the violence, but also being victimized by the violence, they didn't just drop out of the sky. They are our community members. And so just like they've been part of the challenge, they can be part of the solution as well. But that capacity building was something that was so rich for us, that being able to have a table where folks understood what our neighborhood was and what it wasn't, and how we could work with each other to be able to, come up with solutions. Yeah.
So Soledad, Corner's research illustrates how social relationships shape what happens across an entire community, and how the power of networks can be leveraged to improve health and safety for more equitable neighborhoods. Explain how that works.
Yeah, what Angela was just saying was music to my ears, because at Corners we harness the power of network science to help make our communities, safer and enhance neighborhood well-being. And what that means for us is leveraging, bear with me, social network analyses, which is a science that takes mathematical models and statistics to help us understand the connections between people and how those connections affect what we think feel, and do. And those are our networks, right? Angela talked about it in the context of a contagion, and we've seen this science used in multiple fields, like infectious diseases, and to the, helping us understand who we marry. We apply that network science to help us understand gun violence in Chicago, and how that concentrates in these very small networks. Our partners will say, because you can visualize it, that it looks like a web, because we're connecting individuals by their arrest, by behavior that they're engaging in together. And so you can see that, and if you are a part of a network of individuals that have experienced victimization, your risk of victimization, not surprisingly, shoots up dramatically. And so while that science is something that we bring to the table, what's really critical is that we have to marry that with the expertise of the individuals who are doing the work on the ground, the Angelas and the Jesuses and so many of you that are here in this room. Our science is one piece, but together, that is what is really allowing us to better understand gun violence, better understand how we can reach the young people who are at highest risk, and really provide the comprehensive services and the holistic services that you need in order to be able to help individuals come out of these situations.
So Jesus, you've had a pretty long career in CVI, but probably in the last 4 years is when you've really been more exposed to data. Talk to us about what that sort of new language has been like for you and how it's helped you do your work.
Yeah, using data for us is very important, right? Deploying teams in specific areas, right, is one of the ways that we use data. Making sure that we're deploying teams in areas that we've seen increases in violence in, right? Making sure that we're having, traditionally, we would, Tuesday through Saturday, specific times, and then, because of data, we've noticed that there's been spikes on specific days, and we'll deploy teams based on the data that we accumulate and process, right? So if a community is experiencing violence on Mondays and Sundays, right, we'll deploy teams on those days specifically, right? Another thing is focusing on hotspots, right? Making sure that individuals in those hotspots, groups in those hotspots are being serviced as well, right? Mm-hmm. So making sure that, we're touching everybody who is in those areas, so that we're providing services for those individuals. Mm-hmm. Another way is making sure that we're focusing on non-aggression agreements, right? If we see that Group A and Group B have been, or we establish a no slide policy, right? And they've been doing great, right? There's been no incidents, right? We'll think about coming to them with a peace agreement, right? And the way that we do that is, we track whether or not they're beefing with each other, right? So if they're in the green and everything is peachy with them, right? We'll approach them and let them know, hey, things have been smoothed over with your groups. How about a peace agreement for now, right? Mm-hmm. And we've been successful in those things, right? In Little Village, we had an internal beef. Things were very sour at the time, right? And things were not good. And we actually had to sit with individuals, create a no slide policy, and now we have a peace agreement with those individuals. So data is very, very important in our eyes.
Talk about anniversaries as well.
Anniversaries as well. So we've talked about anniversaries, focus on anniversaries. So anniversary deaths in our communities historically have, on those days specifically, have been violent, right? Individuals don't know how to process conflict, right, or grief. So those individuals that are experiencing that conflict and grief, they usually on days that an individual has passed because of a gun violence issue, historically we've seen that individuals come out on that day and unfortunately in our community, retaliation is one of the things that we struggle with. So making sure that we document anniversary deaths through our community so that when those dates are coming up, we engage those groups, right? We take them out of the neighborhood, we create events for them, and really focus on minimizing that retaliation, right? So that's one of the biggest things that we really do.
So Angela, tell us sort of over the course of your time in CVI, what have you gotten better at and what's good, and then tell us any of the challenges that you still face.
Yeah, I think one thing for us is about resiliency, building resiliency in people with our team, and building resiliency in our organization. Because our organization over the last, just in the period of time of working with CP4P, has doubled in our budget. So our budget is about $6 million. $3 million of that is just our violence work. And growth so fast, that has growing pains. We understand that in a human being, an organization is no different. And so being able to be part of that collaborative has helped us to be resilient and to grow with the pace of how we're growing. But the resiliency goes farther, it goes deeper into our team. Our team, which started out, when we first started with CP4P, was 5 individuals in one neighborhood. Now it's 3 separate neighborhoods and we have about 40 people. And so these are individuals who have had some kind of interaction out in the neighborhood, and they see what that action caused. Now they're coming back and using those same skill sets that they've had to create resiliency in our neighborhood. And there's nothing, I think, more powerful, someone mentioned it earlier, I think might have been Soledad, about lived experience. When you've lived something, you understand how it works, you can come and tell someone there's a different way. That is a powerful message that I'm not able to necessarily bring, but my team is very, very able to bring. But on the other side of that, some of them have never worked in official organizations before and things like that. And so all those soft skills about working and doing those things, that's about resiliency of a person. And in our country, it's very hard to be resilient once you've come out of the justice system. If you don't have support, that resiliency evades you. The quicker you run towards it, the quicker it runs away if you don't have a support system. And so as an organization, opening up how to build that support system and working with other organizations to build that support system has helped us to really grow in our resiliency. So
when you think about Claretian Associates and them doubling their budget and having 40 people now, I think it's important to note that, across the 27 communities, they're close to probably approximately 400 people doing this work, whether they're outreach worker, case manager, victim advocate. And so there's a real civilian infrastructure that has been built for public safety in Chicago that's unique in the country. Nobody's doing it at the level that we're doing it today, so that's worth noting. Soledad, obviously coming into this from a research perspective, you're dealing with, organizations and people who, aren't familiar with research. So you had to come with a particular approach to it. So talk about collaborative research with the community. Yeah.
One of our core pillars is what we called an engaged research approach. So when Vaughn said neighborhood science, that for us, that's the marrying of our data analytics with the knowledge and the lived experience that our partners have, because that's the power of the potential partnership. And to be fair, it's a hard partnership, right? I mean, we know that we are from an elite institution, and elite institutions don't have a great reputation among community. Unfortunately, the research field has the reputation of being extractive, and so we are working really hard to change that narrative, to be true partners on the ground, and that means being alongside with our partners from study design to implementation. It is not easy. We have really challenging conversations. We've been pushed, but I think it makes the science better. It makes the research actionable and practical to the people who need it on the ground. And they tell us, I think from the early days of the partnership with CP4P, one of the things that the partners really pushed us to do was think more broadly about outcomes and what success means. So yes, we are all following the shooting and non-fatal shooting arrest rates, the homicide rates. Those are critical numbers, and we should be following them. We should also be thinking about what are the positive outcomes that occur in individuals' lives and communities because of the work of these interventionists. And that's education, health, perceptions of safety, housing, all of the things that we typically don't think about from the research lens, and that's really, I think, pushed the partnership forward.
Yeah. Jesus, how has the Peace Academy, impacted you both personally and professionally over the course of your career?
Yeah, 2018, I remember being chosen to go to the Peace Academy after actually my mentor, the individual who influenced me in a positive way and kind of was the point person that really changed my life. He couldn't make it, right? So I was his replacement. It's kind of godsend, right? But nonetheless, the first 5 weeks, I didn't buy into the idea. I was one of those individuals like, what you gonna teach me about street outreach, right? But after the 5th week, I was bought in completely. I fell in love with the Peace Academy. I really focused on, the topics that were being taught to us, right? We were being trained how to be professionals. We were being trained these models and these tools so that we can be more efficient in our communities, right? One of the biggest things that I took away from the academy for me was really being a safe space, a space that was therapeutic, right? So that I can really let go of who I was, right? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is like, you straddle the fence, right? You go into this work not necessarily bought in 100%. After the academy, I was totally bought in. Mm-hmm. I was really totally bought in because of the scientific terms and everything that we were learning and what I can offer my community specifically, right? It really made a big difference in my life, right? Having the tools and knowing what to say, the right things to say with individuals and help people process things, right? Help people get to where they need to go specifically, right? And if you don't have the tools, you feel mal-equipped, right? You don't feel sufficient in the work, right? So I think for me, just focusing on everything that was being offered to me, taking it all in, positioning myself as a learner, right, was really the main thing that I took away from the academy. I fell in love with it so much. I've been to every single cohort, the case managers cohort, the street outreach cohort, our new victim services cohort, and we have more things, planned, but man, I fell in love with it. I really, really enjoy it. And I still facilitate. I have a few lessons that I contributed to the, to the curriculum. So I just, man, I without the Peace Academy, I really think that I don't know where I would be right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we did in our first cohort is we got our most experienced outreach workers and had them go through the curriculum first with the thought of two things. One, they would help us strengthen, the curriculum because they're the experts. That's what they do on a day-to-day basis. But also that they would become our facilitators and be the ones really teaching the work so that, folks like, Jesus can then come behind us and teach the next group. And that way the folks with the most lived experience and that are closest to the work are doing the work, and being able to work with corners to help us create the science behind the work and help them really understand that they have a real profession. It's not what some guys might call a lick of something they can do when they get out of jail and they just have this job of doing something easy. So he's definitely somebody we're proud of in our work for sure. Angela, so tell us what are some things that we need or you needed from your vantage point to keep this work going?
Yeah, it's greater resources because even though we have things in place, the need is so great. It's still hard to house people who are coming out of certain situations. It's still hard to get jobs, get people to really say, this individual deserves the opportunity to have a living, right? To live a different type of life. And so partnerships that allow us to be able to have housing, have jobs, those types of things are still important for us to have. And I want to add something to something you said about the Peace Academy. Even before we were part of the initiative, you guys were nice enough to let us be part of the academy. We begged, pleaded, please let us come to the academy. And so we have had, every round, we have had somebody in the academy even before we were part of the initiative. And those folks are the folks that are running our programs now, whether it be our CP4P programs, our youth programs, our safe passages programs, because all of it comes together when we're working with those who need housing, when we're working with those who need just critical life care things. It all comes together, and so we've been so grateful to have that kind of formal education to help form how we approach the work.
I love it. So Corners just recently released a report on its latest findings on the work of CP4P. What does the research tell us? Is the community violence intervention actually working? And what have you learned about, is it working?
So one of the things I want to emphasize is that CP4P is a coalition. And so it's made up of organizations, this may be obvious, but it's made up of organizations that have their own unique flavor, style, their own agendas, the way that some are faith-based, they have their own identity. And so the partnership was really about understanding how what impact the coalition had together. And that's really important because sometimes when we're talking about CVI and whether it's working or not, we're comparing programs like what Claretian Associates does with something like a coalition, and it's apples to oranges. And so I just want to remind us that we're talking about a coalition, and one of the most important things that we have learned from CP4P and our long partnership together has been that they have been effective at building a really strong foundation for a violence prevention infrastructure. So when we talk about a civilian architecture, non-punitive, community-led strategies to address those at highest risk of gun violence, interrupt gun violence, and provide the holistic and comprehensive services that individuals need, from behavioral health to housing to legal services, all of it. It's because the coalition has gone through the really hard work of trying to coordinate, trying to develop standards among the partners while maintaining their unique identities, and start to build that coordinated effort that allows partnerships across neighborhoods, because this moves, right? This is across the entire city. It's not just one neighborhood or the west side or the south side. It impacts all of the communities, and so we really need to be working in this coordinated effort. So that is a lesson that we have really learned, and we've learned a couple of others. One is that CP4P as a coalition is reaching the right people. So when we talk about the individuals who are at the highest risk of gun violence and victimization, CP4P as a coalition is reaching them. So CP4P participants are 3 times at higher risk than individuals in their own neighborhoods, and 4 times at higher risk across Chicago as a whole. So we are talking about astronomical levels of risk. We also know that, and this is also something that Jesus mentioned earlier, so, just the compendium of work that is involved in outreach, but that violence prevention is more than interrupting an incidence of gun violence. That is critical, that is primary, but it's not just stopping that. It's connecting individuals to life-saving services. And we saw this play out most clearly during the pandemic. When other institutions were forced to step back, this group had to step forward. And so they were handing out PPE, they were providing diapers, they were providing all of the services that a community member might need in this really, really difficult time, let alone dealing with their own personal challenges of going through a pandemic, which we're all still reeling from. So when we talk about outcomes and narratives, it's really important to understand that this work is more than stopping an incidence of gun violence. And third, we are research never keeps pace with the work that's happening on the ground, so sometimes our answers are unsatisfying given the urgency that we all feel as a city. But we're encouraged by what we're seeing, both at the individual participant level and at the community level. So we see that across the coalition, at the individual participant level, we're seeing declines of 42% in 18 months after enrollment in CP4P of gun violence victimization, and a more modest, but still a decline, 9% decline in arrests for violent crimes 18 months following enrollment in a CP4P program. So they're really critical lessons. And we always want to know what more could we learn about this work. And what we tried to understand in partnership with CP4P was, what would the communities be like without CP4? Like if CP4P had not existed, what would that look like? And so we brought our expertise and have estimated that from 2017 to the end of 2021, CP4P, again, as a whole, has prevented 383 fatal or non-fatal shootings, 383 lives. That is important because it's not just those individual lives, but it's the network around them. Mm-hmm. Mothers, families, siblings, and 605 arrests, prevented 605 arrests from violent crimes. So there's still a lot we're learning. And we hope to, be able to continue the partnership to be able to be more definitive about what we're seeing. But we're encouraged by these results, and frankly, they mirror what we're seeing across other parts of the city, and also across through other programs, and also across the country as well.
Thank you. Well, we want to, open it up for questions from the audience. Do we have any cards, or you want to grab those? So while we're doing that, we have some that came ahead of time. So this is for you, Angela. How would you like to see other nonprofit service agencies support your work, especially those agencies that are not directly involved in violence prevention, but serving the same individuals and working in the same communities?
Yeah, I think it's about collective impact. Everyone can bring something to the table. We're going into, November. Everybody understands Thanksgiving, right? Everybody's not bringing the whole meal. Everybody's bringing something to the table so that everyone can eat off of it. It's the same theory in the neighborhood. We might be able to provide housing. There are people who can provide employment. There are folks who can provide legal services. There are folks who can just provide being able to sit down with someone and give them the soft skills to understand how to resolve conflict without violence. And so it's bringing in those partners that might not do direct work in violence intervention, but have something very needed that we need to be able to have access to, and so that our folks can thrive and be resilient. And I think the other thing, something that Soledad mentioned, is about the teams and the collaboration. Each of the neighborhoods look slightly different. Chicago is a city of neighborhoods, 77 neighborhoods that are very distinct. Our neighborhood is a neighborhood that's very multicultural. Our affiliations that are Latino have Blacks in them. Our affiliations that are Black have Latinos in them. So that means for us that our team looks like everything. We were really excited because our team was one of the first teams that had both Latinos and Blacks and women. And so those are all the things that we need, because I laugh with some of our staff. They remind me that sometimes women can get men to do things that men can't get men to do, right? So it's important to have all of those different, involvements, right? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that's what I would share.
I love it. So here's a question from the audience. Do you see a move towards helping youth with PTSD from gun violence? My experience has made this one of my top priorities to get mental health to our kids. And this is someone from the Chicago Police Department. Jesus, how about you answer that question?
Sure. One of the things that we provide, in the Peace Academy, and also our community partners is CBT, right? So focusing on, those therapies for individuals who have suffered, from gun violence, right? Maybe they suffer from losing someone close to them to experiencing gun violence themselves, processing that and making sure that, you're resolving those issues, right? An issue can be anything from, not being able to leave your house after, experiencing violence to, exposing others to violence based on your exposure to violence, right? So we all know that hurt people. Mm-hmm. So we have to promote healing in our communities, right? Reaching out to the right individuals to offer those services. Like, you're dealing with something, you have a lot of pain in you. I know you lost your brother, right? I know you lost your sister. Putting that on somebody else is not the answer, right? You don't want anybody else going through what you're going through. Like, let's talk about that, right? Let's see what we can do so that you can resolve some of those issues. Like, I'm a big believer in forgiveness, right? And not many people in our community love to forgive, right? So sometimes you have to influence forgiveness in people, right? And tell them, like, you really need to let that go. Where are you going to be in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, right? If you retaliate or if you resolve your issues with gun violence, like, you're either going to be in jail or dead, right? So those are your options, right? Or another option can be you resolve your issues, right? So I think, those are some of the ways that we can put it out there to our community so that, PTSD is a big thing in our community, right? So we really have to focus on healing our communities.
So our behavioral health team created what we call our TIC training. It's a trauma-informed care training. It's a buzzword that we hear a lot today, but I commend our team for putting into the language that our outreach workers in our community can understand and really operationalizing what it really means. And I think part of the answer to what you guys are talking about is also just ongoing support, because getting over death, like, there's, we may have a natural death and you may not ever get over it, but I like to talk about successful coping with loss. And so I think that's what we're really, trying to achieve.
Can I add one more
thing? Yeah, absolutely.
I've never been known for not talking. But
all good. That's perfect. Makes it easy.
But I just want to use an example of a story that happened this summer, and this isn't unique, but I'm very proud of my team for what happened. So we have a summer program. This summer we had 75 kids in our building. 20 of them were 14 and 15-year-olds. 50 of them were 16 to 18. Almost halfway through our 6-week program, 2 of our 14, 15-year-olds were coming to the program. They weren't in the building. They were 2 blocks away from the building, leaving their home. Someone jumped out of bushes and sprayed, grazing one of our 14-year-olds. They, of course, did not show up that day for the session, and the word spread like wildfire. The very next day, my team got together and they walked the kids to and from, because a lot of our kids are from our neighborhood. Yeah. And they needed to come because they wanted to make money. A lot of them weren't so fazed because they were like, oh, there's always shootings in the neighborhood. But it was the most amazing sight to see our team come pick them up and make sure they got home safely. That's right. That's part of that PTSD that we're talking about, helping them to cope and understand that somebody cares, that you have to learn how to walk through a neighborhood where you may get shot. Like, that's on the ground operationalizing, taking what you know and being part of the solution. And I just wanted to share that.
Oh, that's a great story. All right, so if CVI is a viable public safety strategy, does it make sense for the public sector to increase its CVI investment? How about you?
Yes.
That one too.
Next question.
That's pretty easy. Yeah, and I would say I think it's worth pointing out that when we got started, FY18, the state of Illinois was sort of the primary funder of CVI work at the time. And in 2020, the city got involved. And I believe later in 2020, the county got involved. So the city, county, and state are much more involved in this work now. When we started at CP4P, it was 100% privately funded through PSPC, the Partnership for Safe and Peaceful Communities. And today, we're probably 90% publicly funded and about 10% philanthropy. So we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Vaughn, can I just add something to that? I think that the yes, but that's also why it's so important that we think differently about outcomes and how we talk about the work and the narrative. It doesn't mean that the issue isn't still urgent, and we have to think about both short-term and long-term solutions. But we have to, I think, have a different respect and understanding for the work in order to be able to make the case to the public sector and others that this is really something that you have to support in the long run and reset expectations.
Yeah, I love it. How are your programs helping families escape poverty? Because I believe poverty plays a role in violence. Do you believe poverty and violence are linked? Is the federal government doing enough? Anyone want to take that?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
I'll take this part of it about escaping poverty. So one thing that as we've grown as a coalition to understand is that if we have people that are out on the street and they're really helping decrease the violence and decrease the things that create violence, then we need to make sure that they're compensated in a way that doesn't lure them back to the streets. Does that make sense? And so one thing that I think this coalition has worked very hard is making sure that our team have the things that jobs have. You know, whether that's benefits, whether that's a living wage, whether that's opportunities at growth, those types of things. I believe that trajectory to help people see how they're just not, coming out and I don't remember the phrase you used, but kind of like getting just some kind of job, volunteer job. This is an actual profession. You're actually going to school, getting certified, learning these different tactics and different ways to be able to really affect your community. And by this professionalism, this is what helps grow and keeps people moving out of poverty. And I think that's really, really critical.
Yeah, so workforce development is one of the major initiatives within CVI. So in addition to what Angela is talking about, to start there with our staff, when we started in 2018 or FY18, we made the minimum salary for outreach worker $36,000. I think before that it was about $28,000, and then starting FY24, the minimum salary is $45,000. So there's that, there's benefits, and then we're all working on all of our organizations providing life insurance for our partners. But from a workforce perspective, we facilitate GED attainment. We have job readiness services. We have a partnership with city colleges where we pay a stipend to get a manufacturing credential. I think it's important to point out that Chicago Cred does a lot of work in workforce and had a lot of programs around that, and so does Ready Chicago as well. So within the CVI infrastructure, part of what we talked about from the very beginning is not enough to stop a shooting or killing or mediate a conflict. We have to put people on a path to a dignified life, have them wake up every day with some purpose for themselves and also be able to take care of their family. So we agree that there's a link between not only poverty and violence, but poverty, you insert access to guns and trauma, then you have a lot of violence. So we agree with that 100%. Let's see if we can get another one in here. So what kinds of things do you do to retain outreach workers? Is retention an issue for you?
Retention can be an issue, but I have to say that out of our team, we have a lot of our team members that have been with us since the start. Sometimes retention is, being able to keep them focused on moving forward and not succumbing to just life issues, right? Just the things that, some of us might find easier to be resilient from, some don't find easy to be resilient from. So helping them stay on that path. I think also, again, all those wraparound opportunities, those benefits, those things like that. Over the last 2 years, we've actually lost 2 outreach workers because they passed away. And it wasn't to gun violence or anything like that. It was natural causes. This is the first time we were able to offer their families life insurance. We don't think about that. You don't sit around and think about what life insurance means to someone. But when you've lost that person who is the foundation of your family financially, when you're able to go to a family and say, we have a year, for us it was a year's worth of salary for your family to help you to be resilient, that means the world. And that keeps that family coming back, even without that foundational person, coming back to us to make sure that they remain resilient. And so I think that that's the thing that retains our workers. They see themselves going up the ladder, they see themselves improving in life, they see their families in a whole different life and a whole different trajectory than they've ever seen before. And I think those are the things that help our teams stick together and stay together.
How has the migrant and refugee crisis impacted CP4's work? Are we being asked to do more? Jesus, can you answer that?
Oh, that's a tough question.
That's a tough one, yeah, I know.
It really is. Where to start, right? I don't think it's impacted us in a negative way. I think it's impacted in a positive way. Providing services for everybody is something that we really focus on and make priority, right? So making sure that, you know, we're providing educational tools for those individuals as well, right? Like, these are the things that are normal in our community. These are the things that the community struggles with, and, you know, letting them know not to get involved with those specifics, right? I know for me, being from Little Village and experiencing, you know, the loss of our local field house, right, Petrosky Park, and providing that housing for those individuals, right, for those migrants, but also making sure that safety is created around that area. So making sure we're talking to the guys in the neighborhood and letting them know, hey, you know, these things are changing, these things are coming to our community. Let's try to be supportive. Let's try not to, you know, victimize specific groups, right, based on, you know, the issue. But nonetheless, I think it's challenging, but we're figuring out ways to maybe think about what's going to happen in the next couple years, right? I was talking to somebody from the city, Elvis, as a matter of fact, figuring out ways how we can possibly put out some public ed material for these individuals, right? So that they don't, again, succumb to the things that are normal in our communities, right? But nonetheless, you know, I think we've suffered with issues of, you know, tattoos, right? Individuals have come to our community not knowing necessarily, you know, the challenges that our community faces, and letting them know, hey, like, you want to maybe cover that up, or, you know, don't wear those colors specifically in our community, and making sure we provide safety for everyone.
Okay. All right, well, that concludes our discussion today. I'd like to thank each of our panelists for joining us today, and let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaughn Bryant, for moderating such a great discussion, and Rick Estrada for your partnership in creating all of this. Soledad, your ability to understand the data and connect it to real life experience and show actual lives that are being saved makes it very real. So thank you for your part in this. Jesus, thank God your mentor couldn't show up back in 2018, right? Because you said you're better off. Or what would you say? You weren't sure where you'd be without this. I can tell you that I think as a city we are better because of what you've been able to do. So thank you for all of that. And Angela said it so perfectly. Take what you know and be part of the solution. Become part of the solution. You've done that. You're all doing that. Thank you, Angela, for all that you've done to connect all those dots and make things a little bit better. Oh, yes. Sure. We don't usually allow interruptions, but there are flowers involved, so.
I'd just like to say, we just appreciate the City Club of Chicago for hosting this beautiful meeting today. with the Metropolitan Peace Initiatives. All of you have been so informative, and you've just inspired all of us, I'm sure, right? Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I represent the Chicago Housing Authority, and our families are like, let's stand.
And if you're not able to hear, she was thanking everyone that's on the panel in the City Club for this, and on behalf of the Chicago Authority and their families, that their Chicago Housing Authority family.
So we would like to present these flowers to Angela Hurlock.
So well deserved. Thank you.
Chair Hurlock, kudos to you for this remarkable achievement. Your accomplishments fill our hearts with joy. Go, go, go.
Go, go, go. Keep going. That was so thoughtful.
Many years ago, I was a kindergarten teacher, so this is my day.
Dr. Mildred Harris, ladies and gentlemen. One of Chicago's finest civic leaders. Thank you so much. That was so nice. Really, we'd love to have you all back. To encourage you to come back, we're going to offer you each a one-year membership, complimentary, so we hope you'll come back and share some of this continued progress and all the good that you're doing. Thank you again. Enjoy the snow. I think it just stopped. And I hope that everybody has a very safe and happy Halloween, and that we see you back at City Club soon. Thank you.